Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. Today we're doing a series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, and today we have a combination video because one, SRG320 has updated the core, giving it some new improvements in games, and secondarily, fans have released a 0.02 patch for the original Doom on Sega Saturn, which is notoriously not a very good port, and there was a couple glitches when this patch came out, so SRG320 went back into the core and patched it up to make sure everything was working correctly here like it would on real Saturn hardware, because there were some issues in the floor and ceiling with some holes appearing. And honestly, I've loved this call and response of fans out there patching games to make them run better and like they should have back in the day, and then FPGA core developers going in with that developer feedback and making a few changes to the core to make sure everything works correctly. It's just such a fun little feedback loop of everyone working to give you a better Sega experience, and honestly, in 2024 and 2025, Sega fans, especially Saturn fans, have had a lot to celebrate. Before you get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we have a Patreon link down below as well. But honestly, this patch, even if it's not done, fundamentally improves the overall Doom on Sega Saturn experience. And when this game came back out in the day, it was one of those things we knew it could run so much better. If you played Quake or Power Slave from Lobotomy Software, you knew that the Saturn could handle a good first-person shooter with an awesome frame rate. But unfortunately, this port just didn't really have what it takes. And that was definitely a bummer, but now with this new patch, the first thing you're going to notice is the frame rate is markedly improved over the entirety of the game. It is not going to be a perfect 60 frame per second experience, but you'll see here as we move around and swing the camera, it is getting better. And again, this is not a completed patch, it is just the second draft of it, so I'm sure there are more performance improvements that can be gained on Sega Saturn hardware, but honestly, this definitely needed a better frame rate, and it is here. Additionally, there's going to be a bunch of new graphical effects and content that never made it to the Saturn version incorporated into the game. Now there's so many different ways to play Doom, of course, even the original Doom on the AO46 core, although that can be slow as well. But you have Atari Jaguar Doom on MiSTer FPGA, you got the PlayStation 1 version, and soon you'll have the 3DO version, which might not be the best ever, but it's got one of the best Doom soundtracks of all time. But I just love seeing stuff like this again. Fans have been going in and reworking so many different Sega Saturn games in recent memory. We just got the release client for Princess Crown, a game that people have wanted to see translated for the longest time. We also got the new Fan Shenmue on Sega Saturn, and now we have improvements to Doom. And as far as Shenmue and Doom are concerned on the Saturn core, SRG320 patched up the core to make sure both of those games worked, as well as putting in some more quality of life improvements on some of the other games as well. And it does feel like SRG320 is really getting so close to the finish line. We can see it in the distance, and he is sprinting there, trying to get every single game that runs on Sega Saturn, even games that aren't part of the retail library, working, because that really is the thing about replicating hardware in FPGA. So long as the entirety of the retail library works, then you could call that 100% success. But every once in a while, developers will use certain functions or calls on the hardware that maybe no retail game ever actually utilize. We see that a few times on Nintendo 64 fan games that'll use a function in hardware that no retail game ever touched. So going in and making sure all those experiences work as well just shows a dedication to just how good SRG320 is in making sure everything works and works the correct way. And when you get so many improvements in Doom, it just works. And it's one of those things, I just wish this game was better back in the day. I did play it at a friend's house, but obviously PC was the de facto way to play Doom if you had a computer that could handle it. But so many different consoles got ports to varying degrees of success. I'd probably say the best console port, shockingly, is the Atari Jaguar version of the game, because when a good programmer was behind the computer monitor, you could get something great out of the Jaguar, and Doom definitely shows that. But the Saturn version was one of those games, it could have been better. Maybe they ran out of time, maybe they just stumbled with the hardware a little bit, but some of these modders are going back in and basically fixing up the work of developers back in the day. And I would say that Doom on Saturn always had a great soundtrack as well as great sound effects, and some actual music's been added in as well. So go ahead and listen for 45 seconds or so, and I'll come back and talk more about the improvements to Doom and the core on MiSTer. Honestly, I've always loved the soundtrack in Saturn Dune, and that overall evil soundscape with the machinery hum and the demons groaning in the background definitely make it sound like a demon invasion really is happening. I've never seen one in real life, but I have to assume it would sound something like this. Now, as far as the other improvements to this patch for Doom, you're going to get some pseudo-transparencies and effects in some of the actual rocket launcher shots as well as the main menu. Additionally, this entire bob and weave, the physics system is going to be reworked, so it's going to feel a lot more natural when you actually move around. Before, it kind of had this weird cadence to it. There's going to be different skyboxes, there's going to be different lighting, but the most important thing again is the frame rate is just better. This section on the original disc would definitely chug to almost like a slideshow. This isn't going to be perfection, but it is going to greatly improve it. And when you have something like 4 or 5 imps there exploding from a barrel, the game is just holding together that much better than it was in the past. Additionally, there is a bunch of corrupted wall textures in the original build of the game. Sometimes you'd notice them, sometimes you wouldn't, but the patch developers have gone back in and basically fixed all of those corrupted textures. You'll see here definitely the frame rate went a little bit lower when all those barrels are exploding, but it is a lot of effect on screen at once, so don't expect 60 frames per second out of Saturn Doom even on this patch, and you can't really be disappointed. And if the question is why would you play this, maybe you have a lot of nostalgia for Doom on Saturn. Maybe it's the first place you actually played the game and you want to go back in and relive that memory. It's one of those things. I don't judge you for any version of the game you want to play. Sure, there's better versions of Doom, and even once this patch hits 1.0, it might not make it the de facto best version of the game, but for you, if this is where you first started out on Doom, it's going to probably make it your favorite version of the game. And it just goes to show how well the actual FPGA core is doing, and again, just how dedicated SRG 320 is to making this all work. Nobody would fault him if he didn't go in and fix the core for a game that wasn't actually a retail release, because once you start patching games, you can't expect them to perform on an FPGA core the same way they might on software emulation or real hardware. So long as the original retail release of Doom is functioning correctly, that would be good enough for the core. But SRG 320 goes in and makes sure that these type of games work too, especially with the most recent Shenmue, which I did a video on. That's something that's 100% just a fan game. Or if you take a look at stuff on Nintendo 64, there's many fan ROM hacks that only work on software emulation, not on real hardware, or do work on real hardware but run slower than they would via software emulation. And you see stuff like the Turbo Core making those run on real hardware. There's so many improvements we can make in the FPGA code to make this in some ways even better than a real Sega Saturn console. And speaking of even better, the developers of this patch took the audio from mono to stereo, so go ahead and listen to your second sound sample, and I'll be right back with more. Just outstanding audio, and getting that in stereo definitely works a lot better, but every once in a while I feel like maybe one of the sound effects is only coming out of one ear, not both. But then again, I do wear studio headphones when I am listening back to this audio, so maybe it's something when you're actually just listening on your phone or your television, that blending will be a little bit more seamless. Also, there's new sound effects in the game that were unused in the original Saturn version, so you're going to be getting more sound, and honestly, you're just getting more of everything with this new patch for Doom on Saturn. A better frame rate, better motion cadence in the bob, more graphical effects, more soundtrack effects, just more of a good thing, and that's always something we want. I love that fans are out there just doing these things for Saturn. It really has, again, felt like suddenly Sega Saturn is being discovered by so many new people, having so much fun with the hardware, and just kind of finding out that Sega Saturn is a good console, and there's a lot to love on it. I'm sure the MiSTer FPGA core has definitely been helping out with that. Leave me a comment down below and tell me, did you play the Saturn version of Doom back in the day? And if not, what's the first console or platform you played Doom on? For me, it was definitely a 46DX66, but I remember wanting it for the Nintendo 64 as well, never getting it because it just looked like a completely different version of the game. But as far as the core is concerned, it's not an update all yet. You got to go over to MiSTer Discord to the Unstable Nightlies and grab it and manually drag and drop it in. And as far as Doom, the patch, you're going to have to patch a disk and put it into your MiSTer as well. But we're done. Definitely check this one out, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.